It's time for the Engaged Club, the podcast for club managers and operators that strive to create loyal and connected members, guests, and customers. Here are the two guys with the club management and digital marketing advice you need to realize your club's potential. Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Engaged Club. I'm Roger Kincaid. I'm the marketing guy from Off Course Golf. It's good to have you listening.
I'm Jim Hope, and I'm the GM of the Derrick Golf and Winter Club. Roger, what's going to happen today?
Well, I'm going to share one of my more embarrassing moments of a past career that I flopped right out of early in my working days, and use it as an analogy to talk a little bit about email marketing basics. And, you know, email marketing basics, it doesn't quite sound like the sexiest thing to talk about, Jim. And there's going to be a lot of people that are listening to this episode that you already do these things. You're going to go like, yeah, no brainer. But then there's going to be a lot of people that were like Roger Kincaid, age 20 years old, the saucier at a local sandwich restaurant.
Oh, a saucier. So that means you put on mustard and mayonnaise? Is that what the saucier would do?
Well, here's the...
I want to hear this story. I got to hear this story. This is a new one for me. So
the job description, and this was a great restaurant I worked at. It was called Cafe Metro. Anybody who was in Calgary in the 90s would remember it. Great smoked meat sandwich restaurant, but it had a full dinner menu as well, right? Okay, so I would bartend during lunch, and I needed a few extra hours, so they agreed to let me come in the morning and work in the prep kitchen. And I was making the gravies, and I was making the soup, and all that stuff, right? Saucier. So anyway, what I didn't know how to do was have a process and do the basics, right? So when you're going to make like a sauce, the first thing you do is you go get all the ingredients. Well, that's the basics, right? Do we agree?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, so here's young Roger Kincaid. I need a tomato. So I go to the cooler and I go get a tomato, and I come out and then I got to cut the tomato, and I cut the tomato. All right, I need some parsley. So I go to the cooler and I get some parsley, and then I come back. So what should take like 10 minutes would take me 60. And it didn't take long for the chef, Roy, to tell me that I should probably just bartend.
So he was a real mentor then, right? He loved training, did he? Is that what you're saying, Roy?
Well, I tried to do that job by skipping the basics. And if I had bothered to learn the basics, which was you go get all your ingredients, then you portion them up, and then you put them in, then you put everything away. And that's how we're going to do this procedure. Then I would have been a lot better off at making, the sauces for Cafe Metro back in the day. But, it's sort of the same thing with email marketing, right? There are some foundational basics that we do to prepare ourselves for success. But because, email marketing is something that maybe we take for granted in the club business, and by the way, when you send a newsletter to your membership, that's email marketing. Like, let's not make any mistake, right? But we skip over the basics. So I just wanted to revisit the basics to make sure that we're all doing things, properly and making things easier for ourselves from the get-go that are going to set us up for success. So don't be ashamed if this is a refresher course for you. If you already know all this stuff, that's great. But if you haven't learned this stuff yet, don't feel bad. Like, just embrace the fact that, hey, now you're going to be in a little bit better spot next time you click send. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's everybody can do with a refresher, Raj. So as some of this, like what they already know, it doesn't hurt to hear it again, because you might know it, but you might not be doing it either.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing that we want to do is let's work from a template. Okay, let's not start from scratch every time. Most of the great email service providers like MailChimp or Constant Contact, they have a lot of templates that you can use. And the real reason that we want to start from a template, like the real big reason, is because we know that the code is going to be really solid on that template, which means it's going to look great in a Gmail inbox. It's going to look good in an Outlook email client inbox, and it's going to look good on a phone. So let's start from a template instead of starting from scratch every time. The second, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Should you use the same template all the time? Is it important that your look is the same when someone receives it every week, or could you change templates if you wanted to?
The reason why you would want to change templates frequently is to have some variety for email spam filters, right? So that it doesn't look like you're sending the exact same thing every time. From a reader's perspective, you want to have consistency with your branding so that your emails definitely look like they're coming from the same place. And that could just be your logo or your word mark at the top of the email. So I'm okay with using the same template every time, but if you start to notice some bounces or some filtering issues, then you should change up your email template.
Okay, thanks.
I'll tell you, I'll go into some greater detail in that in a future episode, because that goes a little bit beyond the basics. But step one, we definitely want to start from a template. And step two, we want to make sure that we are customizing that template for our club, and we want to do it in a particular way. Your from email address is very, very important. It should definitely say, like, the from email address should be Roger from the Engaged Club podcast or Engaged Club podcast. We just want to make sure that when people see it in the inbox, they know exactly who this is coming from. And we might make a mistake by taking for granted or just overlooking this step. And I might write something like RK from TEC. Right. And that means something to me. But if you just see that at first glance and you've got to wonder, what is this RK from TEC guy? Then you're probably not going to open that. You're not as likely to open that. So let's make sure that we take a moment, and in the from name, from address, we put something that really, distinctly says who we are, Roger from the Engaged Club podcast. Okay.
Yep.
Second thing we want to make sure we do is we want to have some good subject lines on every single email that we send out. Now, I'll just give you a little guideline here. Let's have a subject line that sticks to about 6 to 8 words maximum. And that's just because that's really how much space that you have before something like Gmail starts to truncate your subject line. And let's try to be creative with the subject lines. So instead of writing something along the lines of details about what's coming up next at the club. Okay. Let's have a subject line that says, fall in love this Valentine's Day at the Derrick, right? Or, the moose on the loose, like just something creative that makes people go, I've got to open this.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And I want to make sure too that we're filling out the pre-header section. This is kind of the unsung hero of email marketing. So you know how when you're looking at your email, just in the inbox column before you've actually opened up the actual email to read the body of it, it'll say, Roger from the Engaged Club, and then there's another line, and it'll say maybe join us this Valentine's Day, or it'll say under the subject line, it'll say join us this Valentine's Day, or it'll say now is the time to re-grip your clubs. That's called the pre-header, and it gives an indication of what's to come in the email. And so we just want to have one line. We want to use the pre-header section, just have one line that really gets people interested in clicking and opening up the email.
That's interesting. Would most people forget about that pre-header line? Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. A lot of people forget about it, and a lot of people leave the default text in there. So it says, this is the pre-header.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but I never thought about filling it out, but I do remember, I do know seeing it though. So okay. Yeah. Great.
So at this point, we've got our template all set up, right? We're using a good template. We've got our from address, we've got our subject line, and we've got our pre-header. We know how to use all that stuff. The only other thing that I really want you to do for the basics now is just get out your calendar and set a cadence for sending emails that you can stick to. Once a week is fine. Twice a week might be better. And it depends on your club and how much you have to communicate with your members or with your daily customers. But let's just get out a calendar and let's just set up a cadence that we can stick to. And we'll send that email at the same time every time. Okay, so we'll send it Mondays at 11 o'clock, or we'll send it Wednesdays at 3 p.m., whichever works the best for you. And the reason why we're getting out a calendar to do this is because you're probably going to get out the same calendar that you use to track all of the stuff that's going on at your club. And so that if you're sending out an email on Monday at 11 a.m., for example, that email could include what's happening at the club this Thursday. So you'll see it all at a glance, exactly what needs to go into that newsletter. And you can then make sure that you are scheduling not just when you're going to send your emails, but what you're going to send. So you'll basically be able to say, okay, Monday at 11, I'm going to send out an email, and it's going to include the new membership drive that we're working on, the special steak dinner that we've got coming up this Thursday, and a notable member's birthday, and how you can, wish this person well on Facebook. Whatever goes into your newsletters, but you want to be able to set up that cadence and make sure that you're scheduling it and you know what you're going to include in those emails.
Well, and you will have already had a master event calendar and communication calendar that you're probably pulling from as well, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's really it for this episode, Jim. And again, it's really going back to the basics, but this is the stuff that the most successful email marketers do. This is the stuff that the big, the Tony Robbins types. This is the stuff that big, retail chains, that everybody does really well, because these are the basics. When you get an email from McDonald's, it's from McDonald's, before you even open it up. So, and that subject line lets you know what you can expect when you open up that email, and inside that email, email is a great call to action. Now, we're going to get to calls to action in a future episode, and I'm going to put all of these email marketing episodes together in a toolkit that you'll be able to reference back to at the engagedclub.com website. But for now, those are the basics. So here's what you can do. These are your actionable steps, okay? Set up that template by setting up your from address, by setting up, by writing out a couple of subject lines that you can sort of copy and paste from time to time, and get familiar with how to edit your pre-header in your emails. Do all that right now so that you're well versed in it, and get out your calendar and set up that emailing cadence that you know that you can stick with throughout the year. And that's it. Those are the basics.
Once again, Roger, great actionable steps that we can take back to our club and help us all make a little bit more money.
Yeah, and we looked good doing it.
Oh, we looked really good doing it. Yeah, it was outstanding.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the Engaged Club podcast with Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with your fellow club managers and operators. Until next time, thanks for listening.